What exactly do you do? That's a very good question. Hey guys, this is Yu. So for the past few years, I've been working in the luxury fashion industry full-time, and I've been getting a lot of constant DMs about what's my job, what did I do, my experiences in the industry, especially from a lot of young grads. And a few months ago, I actually quit my job. So now I wanted to finally make a Q&A video about my experiences in the industry and some of my career tips. So let's get started. So the first question, what exactly do you do? So I worked at Bottega Veneta, which is a fashion house from Italy, for almost 5 years. Wow, I didn't expect to be that long, but yeah, like almost half a decade I spent working at Bottega. So when I started out in Bottega, I worked in the digital marketing team in China market. So the digital marketing team back then focused on things like influencers, social media accounts for the brand in China, as well as a lot of like digital ads. So very typical digital marketing work for any brand. And then later on, I was transferred to the global team in Milan, which was like the headquarters office, but I focused on Greater China and Southeast Asian markets. So I still worked in the Shanghai office, but just reported to global team. And then my job is more of like project management in the sense of I have to look at most of the campaigns and events going on in the local markets as well as global, and then support and communicate in all aspects of the marketing. And I was also responsible for a lot of the communication between the global team and the local teams. Okay, second question. What did you study in uni, and did you expect to go down this career path? So I actually studied quite a generic major in college. I studied marketing in business school, which, to be really honest, I didn't really learn anything from. And did you expect to go down this career path? I mean, as a young girl growing up, yes, I was always kind of interested in fashion, but I never really felt like I needed to heavily pursue it as a career. So in business school, a lot of my other friends and classmates, they were in traditional routes of like consulting, finance, accounting, and advertising. The idea of working fashion never really came back to my mind. But somehow one thing led to another, and I ended up actually in the luxury fashion industry. So I guess it's kind of like destiny. Third question, how did you start your career in fashion? Any tips to get into the fashion world? Nothing really dramatic happened to me in regards to getting into fashion. There was a position opening, I had referrals, I got interviews, so I went through rounds and rounds of interviews, and then I finally landed the job. I did have previous luxury PR agency experience as an intern before my Bottega job, which I think helped a lot. Any tips to get into the fashion world? First of all, I wanted to say that like the word fashion is a very generic word. It really depends on what exactly you want to do in fashion. So for example, there's a difference between fashion, e-commerce, and then luxury fashion. And then with luxury fashion, which, you know, I was in, there's a difference between working as an agency or working in-house, which means you're working for the brand in the brand. And when you're working inside the brand, there are numerous departments that also define as like fashion jobs. Within marketing, there's digital, there's PR, there's events, there's clients. And then outside of marketing, there's visual merchandising, there's retail. So there's a lot of different components of fashion. So I think before trying to get into the fashion world, it's very important to first figure out the differences between the departments and also what you want to pursue. Okay, this is a fun one. What does your typical workday look like? Things you love and hate about your job. So a typical day is actually a typical corporate office day, I feel like. So I used to start my job at like 10 a.m. and then look through emails, you know, get ready for the day, and then we have a lunch break. And I think one thing that's kind of different from other industries is after the lunch break, if we have extra time, since our office is right next to one of the highest spending malls in Shanghai, so my manager and I would walk through the mall and look at other brands, kind of like competitive research. I think that's also kind of fun and interesting. And then afternoon is when it gets super busy because that's when the Milan team wakes up. So there's gonna be back-to-back con calls and meetings and nonstop work. Also a lot of deck making and presentations. And then I usually end the job at around 7 to 7:30 on a typical day. Things I love and hate. I wanted to make sure I could cover everything, so I have like my little laptop on the side with all the notes. But what I love about my job, okay, so first of all, of course, it's the employee discounts, the sample sale, because that's one of the major perks of working in the fashion industry. And then also I love my team, especially my Milan team. Everyone's very kind and fun. And I feel like what I love the most, other than the discounts, about my job is after being transferred from a digital marketing team in China to like a global integrated marketing team, I was really able to look at projects, events, and campaigns in a very holistic and bird's eye view. So before with digital marketing, I only worked on digital ads and influencers and social media. I didn't really know the other components of like a project or a campaign. And after moving to the global marketing team, I was able to see each project and event from different aspects. I also learned how each team from different departments work together on a single project, which I think is very important because I feel like by doing that, you can understand how a fashion business is run and how campaigns run from A to Z. Oh, and also I am super thankful that I had very nice line managers throughout my years in Bottega. That I am super grateful for. Moving on to the things I hate about my job.
Oh yeah, I'm joyful.
No. There was a lot of micro things to do that were really time consuming. Like it wasn't super difficult, but just things piled on top of each other. And there was also a lot of back and forth communication between teams, between markets. So there was like a lot of time differences, trying to catch people, a lot of last minute changes with projects and campaigns. And then lastly, the thing I hate about my job, personally, I just don't like Excels and I'm not good with Excels. So when you're looking at numbers though, you have to use Excels. So it's like a mandatory part of the job, but I really didn't like that part. Is it essential to have studied a fashion related topic in university to access such a career? It's a very good question. I would say that it's definitely very helpful if you went to fashion school and then pursue something in the fashion industry. It's not mandatory, but I do think the fashion industry, because it's so exclusive and small, it's very important to know the right people. So the networking part and the connections part is key. And I do think going to fashion school, just like majoring in marketing, you don't really learn a lot of skill sets, I would say, but it's very important to know the right people. And because connections and networking is very important in the industry, for college, I would recommend to go to a school where the location is more of a fashion hub. So New York, Shanghai, Milan, Paris, London. These kinds of cities will have a stronger fashion network. Next question, best starting job for someone who never studied fashion. Okay, so I would say the best starting job would be, unfortunately, interning at either a fashion PR agency or interning in-house, so within a brand. But just a heads up, with internships in this industry, you're either gonna be extremely underpaid or you're not gonna be paid at all. But I do think it's a good way to guarantee somewhat of a position in this industry. But at the same time, because the industry is very small, if you want to get into a luxury brand in-house, it really depends on the number of headcounts at that time at the company. Does a career in the fashion space pay well? Yeah, let's talk about that. The direct answer, no. I do think people who work in the luxury industry are not paid well. This is not just for China. I've heard this also from Seoul, and I know also in Milan and Paris, especially compared to finance and tech industries. So to survive and do well in the industry, I feel like you either need to not give a shit about money, which means you come from a really good family background, or you're just so talented or passionate about fashion that you can overlook low wages. Of course, there are high wages, but that's more like for the higher upper management people. Moving on. What do you think people need in terms of skills, experience, and personality to work in luxury? Okay, so you definitely need to be a good multitasker. There's gonna be like a lot of things happening at once. Good at dealing with stress. And I think it's really important in the industry to have a high EQ, like know how to read the room, be a strong communicator. And most importantly, I do think you need to have thick skin, which means don't be overly sensitive. I think people tend to be a little bit more direct and blunt in the industry, so you really need to just get over it and move on with your job.
Florals for spring. Groundbreaking.
Pros and cons about working in luxury fashion. So the pros, of course, the first one is discounts and employee sales. And then also I do think generally luxury fashion industry, there's a lot of fun people, they like drinking and partying. And often work is like combined with drinking and partying, which is great. Also, like if you love fashion, of course you're immersed in fashion. Like I was looking at handbags and shoes and clothing like every single day, and that was like part of my job. Also, the industry pushes you to communicate more and learn how to better deal with people, because it's a very like people connection, social centric industry. So cons. Okay, so the first con is low wage, and the second one would be the room for career development is pretty slow because there's minimal headcounts, and also there's very slow promotions. And I'm talking about like within a luxury fashion house. Last question. What would be some advices you have for people who want to go into fashion? So the first tip I would give to anyone who wants to be in this industry is location, location, location. Location is key. Meaning the school you go to, it doesn't have to be fashion school per se. I mean, it would help, but I do think location plays a vital role into getting to a luxury fashion brand, just because this industry is so focused on connections and relationships. I would definitely recommend to go to schools in major fashion hubs. Like you can major in fashion in one of the top universities in the States, and if this college is in like Idaho or Minnesota, you're still gonna have a lot of trouble finding a fashion job. Second tip, also very important, is don't fantasize about the fashion industry. The fashion industry, like here again, I'm talking about the luxury industry, is just like any other industry in the sense that it's like a corporate job at the end of the day. Like, yeah, sure, there are fashion shows and like cool parties, but people who work in the industry are working during these shows. They're before, after, and during fashion shows. People are pulling all-nighters, working nonstop. There's tons of images and videos that need editing. There's all the ads, there's the communication, there's like the clients, there's like the influencers and all the data and Excels and decks. And the last tip is do your research. Most girls, including me, everyone's like, oh, I want to be in fashion, I want to work in fashion. But fashion is such a generic word. Within the fashion industry, there's fast fashion, there's e-commerce, there's luxury fashion, and then within luxury fashion, there's the PR agencies, there's the press like Vogue and Elle magazine, and then there's the brands. So really do a lot of research on what exactly you want to do in fashion. It's very important to know what you are getting yourself into. So yeah, that's all for today. Hopefully this video was helpful for some of you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.